There is a small brown bottle sitting in your medicine cabinet right now that most people reach past every single day without a second thought. They grab it for a scraped knee, maybe, or a splinter, and then they set it back and forget it is there. What I want to show you today is that this one plain bottle, the kind that costs about $1 at any drugstore, has been doing quiet, steady work in Amish households for generations. 9 kinds of work, to be exact. And once you see what it can do, you will never look at it the same way again. My name is Esther Yoder. I keep house here with my husband and our 7 children on our farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We heat with wood, we grow most of what we eat, and we have a root cellar that my husband's grandfather dug with his own 2 hands sometime back in 1942. I tell you that not to impress you, but so you understand where I am coming from. I was not raised in a house where you threw money at a problem before you had thought it through. My mother would sooner have sat down and figured a thing out at the kitchen table than spend $1 she did not have to spend. And her mother before her was exactly the same way. The women in our community have long memories, not the kind of memory that remembers what somebody said at a gathering 3 summers ago, though we have plenty of that too. I will not lie to you. I mean the kind of memory that holds on to what works, what cleans, what heals, what stretches $1 into 2, and hydrogen peroxide, the plain 3% kind in that little brown bottle, has earned its place on the shelf in plain households for a very long time. Not because someone saw it in a magazine, because it works, and it keeps on working, and it costs almost nothing. Now, I want to be straight with you the way I always am, because I think you deserve that. I am going to tell you what this stuff truly does, and why it does it, and I am also going to tell you where it falls short, because a person who only tells you the bright side of a thing is selling you something, and I am not selling you anything except the knowing. The plug. Before I get into the 9 things, let me say this once so it is said and done, and I am not interrupting myself later. If you want my complete method for keeping a household the old way, every trick I have worked out over the years and the ones I have not gotten to in a video yet, my husband and I have put it all together over at eliasyoder.com. The link is right below this video. We built a community there for folks who want to work through these methods together, ask questions, and stay consistent when the ordinary days come back and the watching videos feeling wears off. And it does wear off. I have seen it happen. You feel ready on a Tuesday, and by Thursday the old habits have crept back in like they never left. That is what the community is for, to keep you at it after the motivation fades and the real work begins. Because watching a woman on a screen do a thing is one thing entirely. Doing it yourself week after week until it becomes simply the way your house runs, that is something else. That is the part that actually changes your life. The link is below. Go look when the video is done. Now, the peroxide. Why hydrogen peroxide works. Here is the one thing I want you to understand before we go any further, because it is the foundation of every single trick I'm about to show you. When hydrogen peroxide meets something it can work on, it breaks apart, right down into 2 things, plain water and oxygen. That is the fizzing you see, that little foam and bubble. That is not the peroxide failing or going bad. That is the oxygen releasing, and that oxygen is the worker. It is what kills bacteria. It is what breaks down the proteins that make up a stain. It is what gets down into the pores of a surface and does what a rag simply cannot do on its own. Now, the bottle you want for everything I'm about to tell you is the 3% concentration. That is the standard one at the pharmacy, the grocery store, the dollar store. It is brown because peroxide breaks down in light, and the bottle is protecting it. Store it the same way at home, somewhere cool and dark, and it will keep its strength. The stronger concentrations, the 6%, the 12% and higher, Those are for different purposes and they can burn skin and cause real harm if you handle them carelessly. We are not touching those today. 3% plain and simple. That is all we need. Trick 1. Whiter laundry without bleach. I want to start here because laundry is where I first saw my grandmother reach for peroxide instead of bleach, and it puzzled me enough as a little girl that I never forgot it. She had a way of doing the whites, the pillowcases, and the good aprons and the church shirts that left them looking brighter than anything I have seen come out of a modern washing machine with a scoop of blue powder in it, and I asked her once why she did not just use bleach like everybody else seemed to. She looked at me the way grandmothers look at you when you have said something a little foolish and said bleach is loud. It does the job fast, and it wrecks the cloth along the way. She was right, and here is why. Chlorine bleach works by breaking down the fibers in the fabric alongside the stain. It gets things white, yes, but it is doing a kind of violence to the cloth every single time. That is why your old bleached whites get thin and go yellow eventually. The bleach has been eating them just as surely as it was cleaning them. Peroxide is gentler. It lifts the stain through that oxidizing action without attacking the fabric itself. It is slower, I will grant you, and it will not pull out a set-in grass stain the way chlorine will. But for keeping whites genuinely white over years of washing, it is the better tool. Here is what my grandmother did and what I still do. For a regular load of whites, add about 1 cup of 3% peroxide directly to the drum before you load the clothes, or pour it into the bleach dispenser if your machine has one. Wash as normal. That is it, nothing complicated. For things that have gone dingy or yellowed, do a soak first. Fill a basin or your sink with warm water and add 1 to 2 cups of peroxide. Submerge the items and let them sit for at least 30 minutes. An hour is better. Overnight if they are badly yellowed. Then, wring them out gently and wash as normal. Now here is the honest part I always make sure to say. Peroxide has a mild bleaching effect, which means it can lighten colors. Use this only on whites and very light fabrics. Do not go pouring it on your good colored quilts unless you want them to look very surprised afterward. I learned that particular lesson myself one spring morning, and I will leave it at that. Trick 2. Cleaning wounds and cuts, the old way. This is the one everybody already knows peroxide for, and yet most people do not quite understand what it is doing or when it truly helps. Growing up, every scraped knee in our community got peroxide. You came in from the barn or the garden or wherever you had managed to hurt yourself, and out came the brown bottle, and you sat still while it fizzed on your skin, which, as a child, I found equal parts fascinating and alarming. My mother always said, if it fizzes, there is something there to clean. And there is some truth to that. What the fizzing means on a wound is that the peroxide is reacting with an enzyme in your blood and skin cells called catalase. Every living cell has it. So the fizzing you see is not necessarily a sign of infection. It is just the peroxide meeting living tissue. That is an important thing to understand. Now, I want to be honest with you here because there has been some conversation in recent years among doctors and nurses about peroxide on wounds, and I think you ought to know it. For a deep wound or a wound that is truly infected or anything serious, you want to see a proper medical person. Full stop. I am not a doctor, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. What peroxide does well is the first cleaning of a fresh, minor wound. A scrape, a small cut, a thorn puncture. It kills surface bacteria on contact and clears out the debris. Pour a small amount directly onto the wound or soak a clean cloth and press it gently to the area. Let it fizz and do its work for about a minute. Then rinse with clean water and cover it. What it is not good for is using over and over on a healing wound. That same action that kills bacteria can also slow the growth of the new healthy cells trying to close things up. So use it for the first clean. And then after that, keep the wound clean with plain soap and water and a good covering. My grandmother knew this instinctively without anyone handing her a study about it. She used it to clean, not to treat, and that is exactly the right way to think about it. Trick 3. killing mold on porous surfaces. Here is where I lose a lot of people because they have been reaching for bleach on mold their whole lives, and the idea that bleach might not be the best tool for the job sounds wrong. I understand that. It sounded wrong to me too until someone explained it in a way that made sense. Bleach does a fine job on smooth, hard, non-porous surfaces, tile, glass, glazed porcelain, surfaces where nothing soaks in. On those, bleach kills what it touches, and that is that. But mold does not only grow on the surface, it sends roots down, little invisible threads called hyphae that work their way into whatever the mold is growing on. And on a porous surface, like wood, grout, drywall, unsealed concrete, those roots go deep. Bleach, because of the way it is made, cannot follow them. It kills the mold you can see on top and leaves the roots alive underneath. And then 2 weeks later, you walk back into that bathroom, and there it is again, and you think the mold is tougher than it is. The mold is not tougher. Your tool just could not reach it. Peroxide can reach it. That fizzing, bubbling action works its way down into the pores and follows the mold where bleach cannot go. Pour 3% peroxide straight into a spray bottle. Do not water it down for this job. Spray the moldy surface until it is thoroughly wet and let it sit 10 to 15 minutes. You will see it bubble as it works. Then take a stiff brush or a firm cloth and scrub the area and wipe it clean. For stubborn spots, a sprinkle of baking soda before you scrub gives you a little more abrasion without scratching the surface. This works well on bathroom tile, on grout, on window sills, on the wood under a leaking sink, and it does not leave behind a chemical smell that makes your eyes water while you work. I have cleaned plenty of things with bleach in my life, and I respect what it does, but for mold on anything that soaks up moisture, peroxide is the better tool, and now you know why. One warning I will not skip over. If you are facing a mold patch bigger than about 10 square feet, that is roughly a 3-foot by 3-foot square, the guidance from people who study these things is to bring in a professional. Mold that large can point to a deeper problem in the house, and it can be a real danger to breathe. Handle the small patches yourself. Call someone for the big ones. Trick 4. Keeping produce fresh longer. This one surprises people the most, I think, because we do not usually think of produce and disinfectant in the same breath. But here's the thing. What makes fruits and vegetables go bad faster than anything is the bacteria and mold spores sitting on the outside of them from the moment they come out of the ground or off the tree. Every bit of handling between the garden and your kitchen adds more. And those spores, given a little moisture and time, are what turn your strawberries fuzzy and your lettuce slimy before you have gotten halfway through the week. Washing produce in plain water helps. But plain water does not kill anything. It rinses. Peroxide goes further. Fill a clean sink or a large basin with cold water. Add about a quarter cup of 3% peroxide for a full sink of water. Stir it gently and then put your produce in. Let it soak for about 5 minutes. Hard produce like apples and cucumbers, you can leave a little longer. Soft berries, no more than 2 minutes, or they will start to absorb the water and go mushy. Rinse everything thoroughly under clean running water after the soak, and then, and this is the part most people skip, dry it properly before you put it away. Wet produce, stored in a container or a bag, is going to spoil faster than produce that goes in dry. We do this in my house every time we bring in from the garden or come back from the market, and the difference in how long things last is real and noticeable. Not miraculous, I will not call it that, but real. You can also keep a spray bottle with a mix of 1 part 3% peroxide to 3 parts water in your refrigerator and give the produce bin a light spray and wipe down once a week. That keeps the mold spores from building up in the bin itself, which most folks never think to clean, and which is honestly one of the grimier spots in an ordinary kitchen. You did not hear that from me. Trick 5. Removing stubborn stains from cutting boards. And wood in a kitchen is beautiful, and it is also a sponge. Every cut you make on a wooden board opens up the grain just a little and lets in whatever was on the knife: juice from raw meat, beet stain, the oil from garlic. Over time, a wooden board collects all of it, and washing with dish soap moves the surface grime, but does not reach what has soaked in. My grandmother's cutting board was the same board she had used for decades, and it was clean. Not new looking, clean, and the way she kept it was simple. After a regular washing and rinsing, while the board was still damp, she would pour a small amount of 3% peroxide directly onto the surface and spread it around with her hand or a cloth to cover the whole board. Then she left it. 10 minutes, 15, half an hour if she had a stain she was working on. The peroxide would fizz on any organic matter still sitting in the grain, breaking it down, and killing off the bacteria at the same time. For a stained board, she would first rub the cut surface with coarse salt and the cut face of a lemon half. The salt acts as an abrasive, and the lemon acid loosens the stain. Then she would rinse that off and follow with the peroxide soak. Between the two, most stains that had me convinced the board was ruined came right out. Wipe the board dry after the peroxide has sat, and once it is fully dry, rub it down with a little food-grade oil, coconut or mineral oil, to condition the wood and seal the grain back up. A board treated this way lasts for years and years and stays genuinely clean, not just surface clean. Trick 6. Freshening and disinfecting the sick room. When someone in a plain household gets sick, and with 7 children, I am very familiar with this situation, you have 2 jobs running at once. You are caring for the sick person, and you are trying to keep the rest of the house from going down one by one. In our community, there was always an understanding that the room itself needed tending as much as the person in it. Illness leaves things behind on the surfaces, on the pillow, on the door handle that gets touched 100 times a day, and once one child is down, you know the clock is running on how long before the next one follows. I have lost that particular race more times than I care to admit. Peroxide is one of the best disinfectants you can make a spray bottle of, and it costs almost nothing. Fill a spray bottle with straight 3% peroxide. Wipe down every surface in the sick room, the bedside table, the door handle, the light switch, the windowsill. Spray and let it sit for at least a minute before wiping. You do not need to rinse. For pillowcases and sheets from the sick bed, a cup of peroxide in the wash along with your regular soap does a thorough job on what soap and water leave behind. The pillow itself is harder. You cannot wash a pillow every day, but you can spray the surface lightly with a diluted mix, 1 part peroxide to 2 parts water, and let it air dry completely in a good draft or in the sun, if you have it. Sun does its own disinfecting work, and the two together are a fine pair. Now, I want to say this plainly, because I would feel wrong not to. Peroxide is a disinfectant, not a medicine. It cleans the surfaces around a sick person. It does not cure what ails them. If someone in your house is seriously ill, they need proper care. These are things you do alongside caring for them, not instead of it. Trick 7. Garden seed, soaking for better germination. This is one that the gardeners in my community have passed down for a long time, and one that most people outside of it have never heard of. And when I tell people about it, they tend to look at me a little sideways. A disinfectant soaking my seeds? But stay with me, because the sense of it is plain once you understand what you are working with. A seed has a coat on it. That outer layer is what protects the living thing inside through the winter, through storage, through all the waiting, and that coat is meant to be tough. But that same toughness that protects the seed can also slow down germination if the coat is thick or if the seed is old. It is holding on when you need it to let go. A brief soak in a very weak peroxide solution softens that seed coat, just enough to let moisture in faster, which signals the seed that it is time to wake up. And at the same time, The peroxide kills off any mold or bacteria on the surface of the seed itself, which is one of the main reasons seeds fail to germinate even in good soil. They rot before they sprout. The mix is very dilute for this. 1 teaspoon of 3% peroxide to 1 cup of clean water. That is all. Drop your seeds in and let them soak for no longer than 30 minutes. Set a kitchen timer if you are like me and tend to wander off and forget things. More than 30 minutes and you risk the peroxide working on the seed itself instead of just the coat. After the soak, rinse the seeds gently under plain water and plant them right away. Do not let soaked seeds dry out before planting. They are ready to go and they will go better into the soil than into a dry packet. I have done this with tomatoes, with peppers, with some of the older heirloom varieties that can be slow to germinate, and the difference in sprouting time and germination rate has made it a regular part of my spring planting. Trick 8. Clearing up a toothache or mouth sore. I want to be careful here, and I am going to tell you right at the start, because being careful is the only honest way to talk about anything to do with teeth or mouths. If you have a real toothache, a deep ache that has been going on for more than a day or two, or any swelling in your jaw or face, you need to go see a dentist. I am not a dentist. Hydrogen peroxide is not a dentist, and I will not pretend otherwise, because the sort of infection that causes a real toothache can become serious, and it wants proper care. That said, for a mouth sore, a canker sore, a small irritation on the gum, or for general mouth hygiene and the kind of surface bacteria that cause bad breath and early gum trouble, a diluted peroxide rinse has been used in plain communities for a very long time, and there is real sense behind it. You dilute the 3% peroxide with an equal part of plain water, half and half. This is important. Do not put undiluted peroxide in your mouth. It will irritate the soft tissues, and it will make you feel like you made a poor decision, which you will have. Take a small mouthful of the diluted rinse and swish it gently around your mouth for about 60 seconds. You will feel it start to fizz a little, especially anywhere there is irritation or broken skin. That is the oxygen doing its work on the bacteria. Spit it out. Do not swallow it. Rinse your mouth with plain water after. For a canker sore, you can do this once a day for a few days, and most folks find the sore heals faster and is less angry in the meantime. For general mouth health, once or twice a week, as a rinse is plenty. It is not a replacement for cleaning your teeth. It is a supplement. My grandmother had all her teeth into her late 80s. I am not saying it was only the peroxide rinse, but I noticed things. Trick 9. Cleaning the chicken coop and animal spaces. Now we are in my territory, and I say that with some feeling. If you keep chickens, you know that a coop can get away from you fast. The damp and the warmth and the droppings all together make exactly the conditions that mold and bacteria love best. Sick chickens come from dirty coops, just as surely as healthy chickens come from clean ones. The commercial coop cleaners cost more than they ought to and smell like something from a factory. And I am never quite easy in my mind spraying chemicals around animals that are going to turn around and give me eggs I feed to my children. There is a logic problem in there somewhere. Here is what I do instead. Remove the chickens first, always. Then clear out every bit of old bedding before you touch a spray bottle, because peroxide works on surfaces, not through a thick layer of soiled straw. Once the space is cleared, spray the walls, the roosts, the nesting boxes, and the floor thoroughly with 3% peroxide and let it sit 10 minutes. The fizzing will show you exactly where the bacteria are hiding, which is almost always the roosts and the corners. Scrub those well, rinse with plain water, and let everything dry completely before the birds come back in. Peroxide breaks down into water and oxygen. Once it dries, there is nothing left behind. It does its work, and then it is simply gone. Do a full clean once a month and a lighter spray of the roosts every week or two. A clean coop is not a luxury. It is the whole difference between a flock that thrives and one that gives you nothing but trouble. Before I send you off, let me give you the cautions, because the cautions are part of the knowing, and I would not be teaching you properly if I left them out. Always use the 3% concentration. That is the standard brown bottle at the pharmacy. Keep it away from your eyes and wear gloves if your skin runs sensitive. Store it in that brown bottle in a cool, dark place. A bottle left sitting in a sunny windowsill will lose its strength and be mostly water within a few weeks, which would make it significantly less useful. I think you will agree. Here is the warning I feel most strongly about. Never mix hydrogen peroxide with vinegar. Not in the same spray bottle, not one right after the other on the same surface. When those two meet, they create peracetic acid, which is harsh and irritating to your lungs, your eyes, and your skin. Use them separately. Always. I mean that. And one last honest word. Peroxide is a wonderful tool for the small and the middling and the everyday. It is not a miracle. For anything that has gotten genuinely past what a careful household can handle, bring in someone who knows what they are doing. There is no shame in that. My grandmother knew when a job was bigger than her two hands. That wisdom was part of what made her so capable the rest of the time. That little brown bottle costs about $1. It asks almost nothing of you except that you use it right. So go use it. And come down to the comments and tell me your county, how old your house is, and which of these 9 you are trying first. I read every single one, and it never stops teaching me.